All right, good morning. We begin a new day, according to the calendar, a new year. and so we will continue on. We started last time. We didn't have services last Sunday morning, so if you were looking online for a Bible school class last week, we didn't have it. Given the holiday, we encourage folks to encourage their family. And then we'll start again. We start 1 Peter. So if you have your study sheets, we began just kind of by way of introduction last time with regard to Peter's first letter. And to whom did he write it? See if you remember from 2 weeks ago, guys and gals. I got to say guys and gals because I don't want just the men to answer. Because we know how they volunteer and jump right out. Always. To whom was this first letter written to? According to verse 1, chapter 1, if you need a clue. I'm sorry?
The exiles.
The exiles? They were called exiles. In some versions they're called strangers, but why? Why were they called strangers or exiles?
Because you weren't a citizen to that area. Or
Generally speaking, yes. But spiritually speaking, in a human sense, if you're somewhere you don't belong, they call you a stranger, right? Or if you're new to the area. How about spiritually? This world is not my home. I'm just a passing through, right? To the elect, he specifically calls them God's elect. These are ones who belong to God, not the world, right? Therefore, they're strangers in these places, right? And so that's how he introduces the letter to them. The purpose of writing the letter, I just want to remind us, because it's important to have in our mind the purpose to which the authors wrote the book, because it helps us to appreciate the words. For example, someone might say to you, make a comment to you, if you don't understand their purpose, you might take it incorrectly, right? So if you understand their purpose, then you'd be more likely to take it correctly. So Paul's purpose was based upon what Paul's job was to do. What did Jesus tell Peter, what did Jesus tell Peter to do, as recorded in Luke 22:32? What was he supposed to do? Strengthen the brothers, and how did he do that? John 21. What was he to do? Feed them. Feed them. Give them stuff that's good for them. Strengthen them. Isn't that what food's supposed to do for us? Some people get it mixed up. When you do the opposite, when you eat the wrong kinds of food and too much of it, it doesn't strengthen you, it makes you just the opposite. So his job was to feed them what they need in order to strengthen them. The word suffering is an interesting word. It's used how many times in the book? According to what I wrote on your cover sheet. I did the math for you. Suffering. 15 times in this short little letter. It's probably an important theme. The early Christians, the thing you have to remember about the history of the first century church was that they were going through a time of real suffering where they weren't just being teased about their faith. They could be imprisoned for their faith. They could be killed for their faith. I'm reminded when I was in India in 2014, there was a group of politicians that were in power, and they were not of the Hindi religion. They were more lenient towards, they were more open towards other religions, like Christianity. Even the Muslim religion to a certain extent. But then, right after that, and I can't remember if it was the year after that, or 2 years after that, in 15 or 16, they had a new election, and the government was basically almost totally taken over by the Hindi bent. Now, they were more involved in Hindu religion, and therefore they became non-lenient towards Christians and especially against Muslims. So basically the way it played out, that as time went on, the authorities were less likely to hold accountable those who would persecute Muslims or Christians. So guess what happened? The people of the community that didn't like Muslims or Christians then began to persecute, began to harm, even to the point of killing Muslims and Christians, to the point in which the government turned a blind eye and allowed it to go on in India, and even to this day it continues. You still have to be very careful. In fact, so much so that the people I went with when we went to India, the group that went every year, they faithfully sent anywhere from 3 to 6 people to minister there every year, then even before the pandemic stopped going. Why? Because they're afraid for their life. And now they're just following the pandemic. They're now, I guess this last year was the first year they'd gone back. I don't know how many went back, but a few of them went back. But during the time of the first century, the Christians were going through similar things, or even worse. It was open season on Christians. And so they were going to have to go through a time of suffering, because the scripture talks about how Satan was turned loose for a period of time during this time before God then would come and do the old smackdown on them. So they were going to go through a lot of suffering, so Peter was helping them on how to deal with the suffering they were going to go through. So, as we began the questions, if you have your lesson 1, what does Peter offer to God at the beginning of his letter?
Praise.
He offers him praise. What is praise? When you praise somebody, you what? You recognize they did some good, right? And you verbalize it. So Peter is offering God praise because he recognized he has done something good. What great thing is he talking about that he praises God for? In his great mercy, what did God give? A new birth. We talked about, didn't we talk about 2 weeks ago about how exciting it is when a baby's born? Right? What a miracle it is. A lot of people deny that miracle. They say it's just a jumble of cells inside the womb or outside the womb. It is meaningless. You know, if you want to kill it, kill it. It doesn't make any difference. And the whole excitement of the new birth is lost on the selfish attitudes of many people. But when you stop and think of the miracle that's involved in just human birth, imagine the miracle that's involved in spiritual birth. This is not something to just turn a blind eye to or set aside as though it's no big deal. Unfortunately, what happens over time is we humans have a tendency to get used to stuff, don't we? And the newness of things wears off. Dad used to say when we'd crawl up, we want a puppy, or we want this, or we want that. He'd say, yeah, you won't take care of it. We said, of course, we promise we'll take care of it. But Dad understood the nature of the human, and that is, you will take care of it until you get tired of it. In his specific words were, until the novelty wears off. When the newness wears off, what happens? We want the next. We go from PS2 to PS3 to PS4 or PS5. I mean, we want the next one, right? We want the next and the next and the next best thing. Oh, we got new technology come out of the phone. I want that phone. The newness wears off of the old. We become less excited about it. Peter didn't lose his excitement. He praised God for his new birth because where did it come from? It came from God's mercy. In his great mercy, he has given new birth. And what was that new birth into? Let's keep reading there. Verse 3. He has given new birth into what? A living hope. How?
Through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from out among the dead.
Shoo! That's no little thing, is it? That's no little thing. Apparently, someone was telling me not too long ago that apparently science is trying to develop, or going a step further in the development of trying to, in their words, create life in a petri dish. And to grow in a man, to grow a human or an animal, whatever, into an improvised or a man-made womb, so to speak. In other words, they're going to create the environment in order to house the result of their combining the two parts, the egg and the sperm, into, so it conceives, and then it will grow inside this man-made environment. And they are claiming that they are creating, life. And I went round and round with this individual. This individual doesn't believe they'll ever be able to complete it because God's going to end the universe before they're able to complete it.
First of all, they didn't create the beginning.
That was my point to him. I said, if it is possible and God stops it, then the argument of them being able to do it, all we're doing is giving credence to their argument as though they're God. God's going to stop it because they're going to be able to do it. No. They're only able to work with what God has created in the first place. They're still following through. We are all still under the authority of the laws of nature that God has put into effect in the world. We can't overcome them. It's like the old joke about man saying, it's perfectly apt to this. Man says, I can make, life out of dirt, like you did. So God, creates a human being out of dirt. And the man goes and gathers some dirt, and right before he goes to do his thing, God says, get your own dirt. And it's the same thing. They're taking what God has made, they're just combining it in a different way. If you put it into, if they're able through technology to provide a substitutionary environment to the human womb, I don't know that it's not possible, but it's still, my point is go make your own egg. Get your own egg. Put it together from nothing. And then put it together put the DNA pieces together, formulate the strand. And put all the pieces and the nucleic acids and all the DNA, RNA and all that. I'm not a scientist, but put all those pieces together after you make your own pieces. And then put it together in a different way than God did and come up with the same result. No, you can't. You've got to follow God's directions because He made things that way. There's no way that you can go outside of that. He is, and this is what brings me to the point about the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Bringing life into the world from non-life is the impossible thing. That's the impossible thing, is bringing life from nothing. And it's what, quote-unquote, science wants to claim happens simply by accident. The greatest act of God, the non-believer says it happens by accident. You know, I've had a lot of accidents in my life. I've never brought life into being. I can end life through an accident, but I can't create life by an accident. And Paul recognizes this miraculous activity of God to bring life out of non-life. And he recognized it. We're brought into a living hope through this miraculous event of the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. And that's what leads us into the next part, which is what?
Inheritance.
Not just any old inheritance, right? Have you, anybody here inherited something from family? Anything at all, a little or a lot? You still have it? How long will it last?
As long as I can.
Is it easy to spend? I mean, could you spend it? Would it take much to lose it? Is it possible that it will spoil? Sure. How many times have people got a great inheritance and blew through all their money really fast, right? Because it's things of this earth. But our inheritance cannot spoil, nor can it fade, because of where it's at. Where's it at? Pardon? It's kept in heaven for you. So when you get there, you got it. And from there, it won't go anywhere. And neither will you. This is a great thing. This is an amazing thing. Why does that sense of newness seem to disappear in our life? Why is it less important one day than another? Why do we allow the things of this world to compromise our edge of the seat excitement over what God has done for us?
Because we take our eyes off of the direction we're supposed to be going.
Yeah. We're focused on the temporary things instead of the permanent things. We're focused on the dull things instead of the brightness of God. We're focused in on the things that fade and spoil. And we allow that to affect who we are, rather than focusing, as Peter does here, praise be to God and the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, in His great mercy. What do you think of a person's mercy? What do you think of mercy as a concept? What? No, what?
Not hurting somebody.
Not hurting somebody or stopping someone from being hurt? Why? If you're that person that's being hurt or about to be hurt or going to be hurt, I mean, what? If somebody steps in and stops it, what's your response to that? I got out of another jam. And then we go on with life and forget it. Do we? What is our response to that? For how long? I'm asking these questions not to put us down to it, but to really make us, concentrate. Where is our top of the mind awareness? What do we think about each day of our life? How do we begin our day? How do we end our day? What goes on in the middle of the day?
Unless He stopped you from getting killed, you might never forget that.
Might. How easily it's forgotten, though, oftentimes. But again, I'm getting to why. Why is it that it is easily forgotten at times? Why is there times where we're not full of praise or awe with regard to the things of God, unless somebody brings it to our attention? We get focused on ourselves and our difficulties. Oh, poor me. Oh, poor me. I might have to do without something in my life. I had a funeral this last week for one of my coworkers. one of the most important people of their life passed away. How are they then to live? On what should they focus? With what attitude ought they to face each day? Why do you think, what is the first step in grief in the process of overcoming it? Do you remember what the psychologists say is the first step?
Denial.
Denial. That's right. Everybody wants to go to Egypt. Why is it denial? Pardon?
Nothing.
Go ahead.
Then why me?
But why denial? Why denial? Because nobody wants to face the loss, do they? Nobody wants to do without something that they see as beneficial. You don't want it. But does that mean because someone else passed away, you should pass away? Just because you don't get what you want, does that mean you should? I mean, this is one of the reasons that people do. I mean, at Aiden's school, apparently over the holiday, one of the students had taken their life. And he's going to go back to school, and he's going to face students that are going to be going through these issues. We don't know yet who the student is, and maybe somebody Aiden knows. Maybe some of you know somebody who has taken their own life. I counseled a young gal who finally, here just in this last year, at the end of this last year, because all of last year she's been fighting cancer. Young girl. I initially met her when she and her mom and her grandma showed up at church one Sunday. The mother and the grandmother used to attend that congregation. The grandmother attends in another state at another Church of Christ. So they all showed up. They brought the granddaughter. That Sunday, she wanted to give her life to the Lord because of the way that things took place. And after they left that Sunday, her mother passed away. That week. By the end of the year, her father took his life in the backyard shed with a gun. And she found it.
With a what?
Gun. And she found it. She had one child. She was married. And her husband told her the marriage was over. Right before her father had her. All of this took place in what year? I get a phone call. It's from her. She had just taken a bottle of prescription meds. She says she can't take it anymore. I show up at the same time or a few minutes after the rescue squad. Then take her to the psych ward, first to ER or to the emergency room, and then the psych ward. I began working with her for the next, I don't know how many years. She lived. Her sister tried to help her, but didn't live in the area. She'd been in and out of rehab places because of drug and alcohol abuse. With all of these losses, it was horrendous. The last time that I saw her was on her graduation from rehab. It was a joyous time. I kept in contact afterwards. But then this last year, or these last couple of years after, of course, we were gone by then, these last couple of years she developed cancer. And she's been in and out of the hospital in LA taking treatments after treatments. And she finally passed away. How precious is life? precious is life. This life fades, it passes, it comes and it goes. What do we do with it? Do we lose our excitement at the joy of new life? This is a glorious thing. It's so special. God says you don't have authority over it. We have no authority over life in any way, shape, or form. We can't create it, and it's not ours to take it. It's His. He is the author and the finisher of life. It's a marvelous thing. It's beyond our capability. It's beyond our authority. It ought to always amaze us. One of the things that's hard for me to do, and I hope from this point on it'll be hard for you, and that's to look into somebody's eyes and not be moved by the life that animates those eyes. How can you look at somebody's eyes and be selfish? How can you do it? How can you look in somebody's eyes and say, it's not about you, you're not important, it's about me? That's got to be the depth of depravity, isn't it? And that's why I say, is we need to rediscover the value of life that God has put upon life. And we need to praise Him for it and be always mindful of what we have received as far as new birth through Jesus Christ. Whew, when we think of this new year, think about your new birth. Right? How exciting each day is to live for God. For He has made us alive. Right? He's made us alive. And we have an inheritance that will never spoil their faith. It's kept in heaven for us by the faithfulness of God. We know what is there for us. The next question, number 2. Because of our faith, what does God's power do for us? Verse 5. Who through faith are what? We are shielded from what? For what? Until when?
From death.
Well, let's just read it. Who through faith are shielded by God's power until the coming of the salvation that is ready to be revealed in the last time. So Paul is telling, or Peter is telling these folks here that God is reserving for them, by His power, He's shielding their life, their inheritance. They are protected by Him until it comes, until they lay claim to it, until it is theirs completely. Whatever he means by last time there. Okay? But they will lay claim to it. And His power will shield it, will take care of it. There is nothing that's going to get in the way, is what he's saying here. Nothing is going to stop or penetrate His power. And that inheritance is there for them. Do you think that's important for them to know? Do you think, put it this way, do you think it's important that Peter points this out to them before he gets into the subject of how much they're going to suffer? Why? Why would it be important for them to have this understanding of the way things are before they enter into this time of suffering?
Strengthens.
It what?
It strengthens.
It strengthens them, it absolutely does. If they utilize it, of course, right? So where's our focus when we go through these times of suffering? Is it on the suffering? Is it on poor me? The only thing that allowed this young gal to get through the times that she had to get through, there were times that she gave into it. It's poor me. She gave into it, suffered for it. But when she was able to make the leap from poor me to, hey, wait a minute. I belong to God. I belong to God. I don't belong to this world. I don't belong to this suffering. I don't belong to me. I belong to Him. He's got something greater in store for me than this. It was at those times that she was able to overcome her difficulties. It is why she went from her first time of losing her mom, got all the way through that. At times she dipped and plunged because she didn't make it. Other people stepped in through God's grace and pulled her out so that she could get to the point where she could recognize God's working in her life and what God had in store for her that allowed her to finally fight during the cancer. It was an ugly fight. It was an ugly fight. But even though her body didn't win, boy, her soul did. What about us? This is a great letter Paul wrote. And we're only in the first 5 verses. But I would encourage us as we, read the rest of this letter, that we keep our mind focused on the things of God that are praiseworthy, that we recognize how precious life is, okay? As we go through things in life. It ain't about you. It ain't about what's going on in your life. It's about what God is going to do with it and has done through Jesus Christ. What do you think? Pretty good one. Yes? You want me to put this up here? Sure. Are you seeing a lump today, or do you know yet?
As far as I know, probably, and I know all the songs. As far as I know, I'm probably in, I know all the songs.
I didn't know if the other guest was coming, or you don't know
I
either.
don't know.
She has to,
Hmm?
it's a
It's
mystery.
always a mystery. All right,
Better a mystery than a drama.
this is